Imagine this. Every single country on Earth is technically bankrupt. Yet every single month, salaries hit bank accounts, pensions arrive on time, supermarkets stay stocked, and life continues. Almost as if nothing's wrong. As of early 2026, global debt has smashed through the $348 trillion barrier. That's more than 3 times the entire money supply on the planet. And it's exploding by roughly $100,000 every single second of every day. Here's the question that should send a chill down your spine. If literally everyone owes money, who in the world is actually getting paid? Debt isn't some modern financial invention. It's older than recorded history. Over 5,000 years ago in ancient Mesopotamia, a desperate farmer would knock on his neighbor's door and borrow grain. The agreement was brutally simple. I'll repay you after harvest, with a little extra for your risk. No banks, no contracts, no lawyers, just a handshake, built on fragile human trust. But debt has always carried a dark shadow. When too many borrowers defaulted, famine, unrest, and societal collapse followed. Ancient kings learned a hard lesson. The only way to prevent total breakdown was the debt jubilee, a sweeping royal pardon that erased all debts. These forgiveness cycles were even codified into law in Babylon to keep civilization from tearing itself apart. Centuries later in medieval Europe, the pattern repeated with bigger stakes. England's King Edward III borrowed the modern equivalent of $1.5 billion from powerful Italian banking families in the 1340s to finance endless wars, then simply refused to repay. The shock nearly collapsed the entire European banking system. France's King Philip IV took an even darker path. In 1307, he orchestrated the mass arrest of the Knights Templar, seized their vast wealth, and effectively canceled his massive debts by force. Then came a quiet but revolutionary turning point. In 1688, with Britain's Glorious Revolution, Parliament stripped the monarch of absolute financial control, declaring, "From now on, the nation borrows, not the crown." In 1694, the Bank of England issued the world's first true government bonds. Ordinary citizens could now lend money to their country, earn reliable interest, and feel genuinely patriotic doing it. But one golden rule kept the system honest for nearly 3 centuries. Every single currency unit had to be backed by real, physical gold. That discipline held until 1971. President Richard Nixon stared at exploding costs from the Vietnam War, massive welfare expansion, and post-World War II global commitments. Foreign nations, led by France, Issachous, de Gaulle, started demanding their gold back. French naval ships actually docked in New York Harbor to load crates of gold bullion from Fort Knox. Nixon's dramatic response on August 15, 1971, the Nixon Shock, closed the gold window forever. The US dollar became pure fiat money, valuable only because the government said it was. The final link to physical reality was severed. The consequences were breathtaking. In 1971, global debt was just a few $1 trillion. By 2000, $80 trillion. By early 2026, $348 trillion, an almost unimaginable 31,400% explosion in just over 50 years. So, who actually owns this mountain of debt? It's not China pulling the strings. It's not a secret cabal. The answer is far more intimate and far more unsettling. You do? Let's dissect the world's biggest debtor. The United States, now carrying nearly $39 trillion in gross debt. Roughly 70% of that is owed right back to Americans. Here's the ingenious and slightly terrifying mechanism in action. You deposit $1,000 into your everyday bank account. That bank doesn't stash your cash in a dusty vault. Wait in oars. It purchases U.S. Treasury bonds, effectively lending your money to the federal government. The government spends it on infrastructure, defense, healthcare, education, scientific research, social safety nets. It pays your bank handsome interests on those bonds. Your bank passes a small slice back to you as savings interest. Meanwhile, you pay income taxes, sales taxes, payroll taxes. Those taxes help fund the government's interest payments, which flow back to banks, which pay you again. It's a self-reinforcing financial Ouroboros, a snake devouring its own tail in an elegant, endless loop. the largest single domestic holder, the Social Security Trust Fund, sitting on over $2.7 trillion in U.S. treasuries. Your future retirement checks are literally government promises, owed to its own citizens through your pensions, 401 KS, insurance policies, and bank deposits. Zoom out to the global stage. Japan holds approximately $1.24 trillion of U.S. debt. China holds about $693 billion, steadily diversifying away. Yet America owns enormous slices of Japanese, Chinese, and European bonds in return. It's the ultimate global game of financial musical chairs, a $348 trillion web where everyone owes everyone else. The entire system spins smoothly, only as long as the music of collective trust keeps playing. But what happens when one country tries to stop dancing? Greece learned the devastating answer in 2010. Investors fled, borrowing costs exploded, and credit doors slammed shut. The EU and IMF offered bailouts, but only under crushing austerity conditions. 1 in 4 public workers lost their jobs. Wages plummeted by up to 30%. GDP collapsed 25% within 5 years. More than 200,000 young, talented Greeks emigrated, creating a brain-drain tragedy. Engineers became Uber drivers in London. Architects waited tables in Berlin. An entire generation was economically sacrificed. The final, cruel twist: Greece's debt ratio grew worse, not better, as tax revenues evaporated and more borrowing became necessary. Then came 2020. COVID-19 paralyzed the world economy. Governments faced an impossible binary: allow total collapse, or borrow on a scale never seen before. The US added $3.8 trillion in 1 year. Japan and China each exceeded $1 trillion. The world chose survival through debt. Now the interest bill is arriving with vengeance. The United States alone pays over $1 trillion per year in interest, surpassing its entire defense budget. That money builds nothing. It simply flows to bondholders worldwide. For developing nations, the trap is often lethal. In recent years, 53 countries spent more servicing foreign debt than on healthcare for their own people. Zambia defaulted. Sri Lanka defaulted for the first time in its history. Pakistan, Ghana, Egypt, and others balance on a knife's edge. Looming large is China's Belt and Road Initiative. Since 2013, Beijing has extended over $1 trillion in loans to more than 150 countries, financing ports, railways, highways, and power plants. When payments fail, the consequences are swift and strategic. Sri Lanka, unable to service its debt, granted China a 99-year lease on the Hambantota port and surrounding land. Other nations risk losing control of critical infrastructure and resources. This is debt trap diplomacy. Modern colonialism without a single soldier. There is no easy escape. Stop borrowing. Economies crater. Unemployment surges. Societies fracture. Print money aggressively. Hyperinflation destroys savings. Venezuela's 9,586%. Inflation and Zimbabwe's 79.6 billion% monthly rate remain nightmarish warnings. Mass default by major economies like Italy or Japan. The resulting domino effect would dwarf the 2008 crises that required $12 trillion in global bailouts. The brutal truth: the machine demands perpetual growth. Only a handful of disciplined nations like Norway and Singapore have managed it successfully. Most of not. So in the end, who does the world truly owe? You, me, our neighbors, our families, your savings account, your pension fund, your insurance policy, your children's future opportunities. We owe it to each other in one vast, interconnected circle. This colossal system will continue spinning until, one day, it simply cannot. Right now, nations like China, Russia, India, and Turkey are stockpiling gold at historic rates, quietly preparing for the moment trust finally fractures. On-screen text fades in. The entire $348 trillion system rests on one thing: trust. What happens the day that trust finally breaks?